you. I believe some of you have not eaten, so we're getting some food over so that you can eat something while the talk is on. We have great pleasure in welcoming all of you. You're going to start off, so I don't want to. Yeah, please, Menika, over to
shared destinies. Before we start off, I request Professor C. Rajkumar, the founding Vice Chancellor of Jindal Global University and the founding Dean of Jindal Global Law School, to welcome the dignitary.
Thank you, Menika. Good afternoon. As Menika mentioned, that we have a very distinguished scholar, public intellectual, a senior official in the Commonwealth, Professor Dr. Louis Franceschi, who is the Assistant Secretary General of the Commonwealth and used to be the Dean of a very, very major law school, founded it as well, and he'll tell a bit about that as well. I'm very fortunate that he accepted our invitation to be here, because for many of you, you may not be familiar with the role of the Commonwealth, and I will ask him to speak a bit about the Commonwealth itself. But one of the remarkable things about our own journey in 1947 was that India chose to be part of the Commonwealth when we could have decided something else. So that had huge historical and institutional implications for the way we ended up being governed, but more importantly, the interconnectedness that we have established with the Commonwealth. Today, there are over 50 plus countries as a part of the Commonwealth. Besides the Commonwealth, which he is part of, there is another organization called the Association of Commonwealth Universities. India has the largest membership to that. I also serve as chair of one of the regional committees. So there are huge opportunities for many aspects of the Commonwealth, including the common law tradition, deep commitment to democracy, shared commitment to the recognition of institutional independence and autonomy, deep and pervasive commitment to rule of law, and many other traditions that the Commonwealth has established. So we are very fortunate that Professor Louis Franceschi has accepted our invitation. I'm going to now request him to deliver the distinguished public lecture on the theme, the rule of law in the Commonwealth, diverse communities and shared destinies. By the way, this topic is something that I had put and then sent it to him, and he accepted it. So thank you so much for that as well. Over to you, Louis.
Thank you very much, Vice Chancellor and Dean, Professor Raj Kumar. Perhaps you don't realize, because you have him on campus always, but he is one of the most impressive, prolific, and prestigious Vice Chancellors I know. And I know many of them because as Dean and Professor of Law, I have perhaps taught in more than 50 universities across the Commonwealth. And it's fantastic, the work OP Jindal has achieved in just a few years. Now you may take it for granted because you are here, but once you go and you join the profession, you will realize the incredible spirit OP Jindal had and transmitted to you. 22 years ago, Steven Spielberg released a movie called AI, Artificial Intelligence. It was a $95 million film where a little child was coded with artificial intelligence, which Spielberg already foresaw, as a child who could laugh. So he was the first robotic child programmed to laugh. And the motto of the movie was, his laugh was real, but he was not. Okay, this movie put across a very simple yet deep reality message. The world is changing and we are not. The world is changing at incredible speed, and we, institutions, justice, governance, democracies, education, is not changing at the same speed. I was invited to tell you about the rule of law it's quite a boring topic if we take it dry like that. But we'll make it interesting. And I will begin by saying why speak about the rule of law. The rule of law is a fundamental principle that is essential to the proper functioning of a democratic society. It is the idea that everyone, including the government, must be subject to and abide by the law, and that justice must be administered fairly and impartially. Why in the Commonwealth? The Commonwealth is an organization of 56 independent countries, many of which were former colonies of the British Empire. 4 were not: Togo, Gabon, Mozambique, and Rwanda. The principle of the rule of law is enshrined in the Commonwealth Charter, which was adopted in 2013. The Charter sets out the values and aspirations of the Commonwealth, including the rule of law, democracy, human rights, and sustainable development. Are we diverse in the Commonwealth? Diversity is a fact of life in many societies around the world, and it can take many forms, including differences in race, ethnicity, culture, religion, language, and socioeconomic status. While diversity can be a source of strength and creativity, it can also pose challenges when it comes to creating destinies. And a famous poet put it as follows: "Our path entwined in fate's embrace, our destinies forever interlaced, two souls bound by the threads of time, a shared journey, a rhythm divine. We traverse the world in tandem, through valleys deep and mountains grand, our footsteps echoing in unison, guided by destiny's master's plan. In moments of joy we laugh as one, in times of sorrow we mourn as one, for our shared destiny, a bond so strong, endures the trial, both short and strong. As the sun sets on our journey's end, our souls forever intertwined, my friend, for though we may walk separate ways, our shared destiny, a memory that stays." Ladies and gentlemen, I am disposable. I am not needed. I don't even need to be giving this lecture. What I have just read, including the poem of the famous author, was taken from ChatGPT. ChatGPT in 4 seconds composed the poem. In 2.5 seconds told me what the Commonwealth was. And in less than 2 seconds told me what the rule of law was. I passed this through Turnitin, and it's 100% original. Okay? And this is going on. It's incredible. This is going to be a revolution for education. How does the lecturer know that you are the one who wrote that poem or not? Okay, perhaps software is coming up to tell us if this was generated or not, but how can ChatGPT or similar programs will not evolve to tell us, to tell that program that this is original? So it's very interesting. The world is changing, but we lawyers, teachers, university, governments, and multilateral institutions are resistant to change. And it's your generation, the first generation, that will have in their hands the power to somehow dictate the future. How do you want it to be? My parents were a generation that was virtuous. Old is good. This is how it has always been done. Therefore, it's good. Our generation, Vice Chancellor, myself, was actual. Old is bad. Now, the time, what's happening today is important. Your generation is virtual, is the future. Some of you have different personalities in social media, and some of you have different ways of looking at the world, and you are immersed in the mobiles. As I walk around the university, I was seeing that, yes, it's the same as it was in my times in terms of life and bubbling with life, but in my times we did not have neck problems. Now you do, because many people walk around like this. And suddenly, oh, sorry, there's a dustbin here, I didn't see it. Who moved the dustbin? So the world is changing, we are not. And now, when this happens, the rule of law suffers. Why? Because the rule of law is supposed to somehow regulate reality so that everyone is equal and have equal opportunities, equal launching pad, equal entrance to society as a citizen and responsibilities. But of course, when reality changes and the rule of law doesn't catch up, that vacuum is filled by tyranny. And tyranny is a constant danger. So we have to make the rule of law catch up. Why? Because tyranny destroys diversity. Anything that doesn't look like I want it to look will be destroyed. And precisely when you destroy diversity, those common values disappear, are only the values of the tyrant. And I don't refer here to governments that are tyrant, but everywhere. I mean, the world is changing in incredible ways, so much so that the 6 biggest corporations in the world, in terms of capitalization, did not exist a few years ago. I mean, if you look at Alphabet, that is Google, Tesla, which other, well, Apple, Microsoft is the only one that existed in some ways, Amazon. Well, they did not exist some years ago, and nowadays they are controlling the world. The economy of Apple is bigger than Africa plus the UK combined. And when we think of Trump, the former President Trump, being thrown out of Twitter, and we may have celebrated it, but I ask myself, who made that decision? Where was it made? And what redress Trump had? I may have been personally happy that it was thrown out. It was too much. But wait a minute. Who threw him out and why? And how can this be redressed if it is an injustice? Because if this happens to Trump, it can happen to you and to you and to everyone. So it's a very interesting dynamic we are living that we do not know where it will take us. But that means there are 5 or 6 corporations in the world, there are 15 corporations in the world that are more powerful than any government on earth. And this is quite interesting. The world is changing, our institutions are not. In 2017, a panel of Dell experts set up by Dell, made a study and said that 85% of the jobs created by 2030 did not exist. 7 years have passed, there are 6 years left. Still 70% of those, or 65% of those jobs have not been created. I come from Kenya. In Africa, we say as a joke, but it was true, you have 4 possibilities in life. You can either be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, or a disgrace to the family. So, well, that's changing. There are new, incredible opportunities that have opened up, and we did not know about them. For example, I will mention a few. Nostalgist. Okay, a nostalgist is an interior decorator who decorates your house as it used to look when you were young in the 60s or 50s for old people. And these people are getting money, especially in the West, where people are growing older. Rewilder is a guy who recovers a mine that destroyed the land by extraction, and suddenly they create golf courses, new forests, roads, parks, etc. Telesurgeon, guys who are operating from a distance, and this is already happening. Okay, surgeons in Europe or the US or India who are operating through robotics. A fellow in Africa or wherever, in Asia, in the Pacific, in a remote location where there are no such facilities. Garbage designer, because there is a huge problem of garbage. Now, of course, they are designing now dust pits, rubbish pits, which are simplicity experts. People who reorganize the structure of the rooms of the office in simplicity, with simplicity. Solar experts. It didn't exist. Now they are solar experts, and they're installing panels and advising, etc. Zoom experts. They are trained by TopTal, and they make money. And these are people who help corporations deal and set up Zoom that did not practically exist before COVID. And then influencers. Some of you may be here. An influencer, wow, is a big thing. I mean, I met the other day a lady who has 1 million followers. That's a lot in Africa. Of course, in India, you may have somebody who has 300, 400 million followers. Well, a person like that has an incredible, that jargon was created in 2018 by New York Times. I was once walking along the law school, Strathmore University Law School in Kenya, and I met Grace Dida, a young student of law. Hey, what are you doing? She had her laptop and she was writing furiously. And I thought she was saying, well, I'm doing contracts. No, I'm studying Python. And this is not witchcraft. Python is a programming which some of you have done, perhaps. Say, wow, a law student doing Python, this is a new thing to me. Because in our days, we did law because we hated math. So that's changing. Lawyers may have to be coders. I mean, why can't AI resolve a small claim? Why should it be a judge when we can code AI to resolve small claims, and that becomes the small claim courts, which are paralyzing the Indian legal system, when you sometimes spend 432 weeks resolving a case. And it's a case that could have been resolved in just like that. Well, Dubai and Qatar have set up those international financial courts for investors. They resolve huge disputes in 4 weeks. The UK in 32, Kenya in 58. But why should it be 58 weeks or 400 or 30 weeks? Even 4 for certain types of claims. Wow, things are changing. And the world is changing. India is changing faster. I mean, it's incredible what I have seen. I have come to India 3 times, to different cities. Maybe you take it for granted, but I have seen the change happening. At 6.1%, India is the fastest growing economy in the world. The 10th fastest growing cities in the world are all of them in India. The 6 biggest companies in terms of capitalization are not in India, some of them are, but Apple, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, and Tesla did not exist a few years ago. Well, powers are shifting. India is an incredible example of growth, of innovation, and this has to pass across the Commonwealth. I will explain a little bit something that caught my attention. I visited the High Court of Delhi 2 days ago, yesterday actually. I was there with the judges and talking to them. It's a paperless court, now they have no papers, etc., etc. They have innovated quite a lot in what refers to justice delivery. But one challenge they are very much aware of is that we are still innovating on a system that may not be the right system. I mean, if you look at a court 500 years ago and a court today, they look largely similar. And how we have tried to improve is by placing cameras in the courtroom and recorders and the e-filing system. But you say, well, wait a minute, isn't this type of innovation the same that was happening with maps 20 years ago, that we had the big maps and you saw people driving with those big maps? Maybe you didn't because you are too young. And then from there we went to the A to Z maps that were a book and it was easy to drive, but that was not innovation. Real innovation came with Google Maps. And when Google Maps began, they thought they were crazy. You guys, you think you are going to map the whole world? Are you out of your mind? But they did it. It was a matter of art, going little by little, patiently, until every corner in the world was mapped. Well, these revolutions are happening all across the spectrum. Now, why is the rule of law being held back? And when we say the rule of law, I mean the justice system, which is actually the one that delivers justice to the people and make us all realize that we are equal in the eyes of the law, no matter if you are on top or at the bottom, but everyone has somehow equal opportunities. Uber caused a revolution in the transport industry. I mean, Uber was a very simple concept, an app that put together the guy who had a car with the one who needed the car. And that made taxi drivers irrelevant all over the world. Okay? And they had to join Uber or they would disappear. And some of them fought. In Kenya, we burned a few Ubers. We put them to fire because they are taking our jobs until the taxi drivers realized, look.
Even in India, it happened.
Exactly. It happened.
In Bangalore.
In Bangalore,
Mumbai as well.
in Mumbai. And then, but very soon they had to go into Uber or similar apps that have been created. Now, what we are looking for and what the Vice Chancellor is looking for is the Uber of justice, the Uber of government, the Uber of education. What is it that will make justice somehow be faster and more accurate and less complicated, less expensive? Because we lawyers have become the manipulators of a system, but we are supposed to be the agents of justice. So of course, if we are manipulating a system that is automated, our days are counted. We are a species in extinction, in danger of extinction. And of course, the systems will change. So we better redesign and rethink ourselves. When you come out of law school, or whichever school you are in, it's not just as simple as it was in the past that I will join the best and the biggest law firm and then that is my success. Now you have to start rethinking. And maybe you have to come up with something else. An e-farm, many students, many young professionals have done so. And these changes are happening in the whole spectrum of society. Another example, Elon Musk. He did something very interesting. He started saying he wanted to go to Mars, and everyone clapped. Hey, yes, we want to go to Mars with Elon Musk one day in 3 years. And he started sending all those rockets in SpaceX, and they would come back and land beautifully. Say, wow, this thing is landing, great. But Elon Musk was really populating the space with satellites. And now Elon Musk has 3,660 satellites on orbit. Half of the satellites of the Earth belong to Starlink. And you say, hey, this guy, one person, owns 50% of the communication power going from my phone to his phone through the satellite system, because that's what they do, even if we are next to each other. Well, he could very well do to all the mobile companies what Uber did to the taxi drivers. If he decides to produce a Tesla satellite phone now, it's over. Not only for them, but for Vodafone and Airtel and etc., but also for Apple and Samsung. They will be left out of the hook, and they don't own the other half of the satellites, 5% of which is in the hands of India, the other in other countries. But well, it's a power that, hey, if left unchecked, can lead to huge problems. I mean, how do we see the rule of law now coming out of my country into the whole world in these circumstances where we are all interrelated, but there is one company that has the whole power of information? Well, it's very interesting. What is the Commonwealth doing in this area? The Commonwealth is looking for the Uber of education, the Uber of justice, and the Uber of governance. I'm not advertising Uber here, but it's the concept, okay? The rule of law needs to catch up. And we have to fill that vacuum that has been left. Otherwise, it will bounce back on us. So the Uber of education. or the innovation in education, let's call it like this. Well, when COVID happened, many educators went into the flip the classroom approach. Okay, they say, well, now it's not a matter of teaching through Zoom, but I will record my lectures and then exactly send them to students. They have to see the lectures at their own time, and then when they come back, we resolve questions. This was an incredible innovation because it put everyone, the bell curve that you usually have, at the same level. You know, you usually have the very clever ones, the middle class of the class, and then the ones who are not so endowed, at least for that subject, okay? So by going out with those recorded lectures, they all saw it. The very clever ones may see it once, the other ones 2 times, the other ones 10 times, whatever it was, but everyone was on equal terms and everyone understood. So now everyone could come with the same knowledge to ask questions. That was an incredible. But then I asked myself, wait a minute, Sony Pictures, which perhaps some of you know because you watch movies, mostly Hollywood, they make $200 million in profit from movies, and they are one of the biggest. Well, they make $22 billion from gaming. So basically, Sony Pictures is not there to make movies, it's there to make games, and that's where their profits come from. Well, why can't we use gaming for teaching? You imagine if you had procedural law taught through gaming, and there was a game, and a game has to be always very simple. I mean, like, I don't know, FIFA 2023 is just about putting the ball in the goal, okay? So it's a very simple concept, but the rules, the etc., everything. So, well, a game with justice, the aim is to achieve this, but then you go through the whole process and procedure. People, you will never ever forget procedural law if you went through gaming. So those are the challenges law schools are looking at. How can we use the innovations that are going on around so as to make it part of our teaching? And then the time we are not spending, because education will be faster. Okay, if you give me a game of human rights, wow, I may learn human rights in 2 weeks because it's exciting and I spend the whole day, 24 hours, well, not 24, you have to sleep, but many hours with games, playing the game of human rights or whatever it is. Well, what do you do with the rest of the semester? You dedicate it to now the classicals, history, critical thinking, character building, things that we have forgotten. So it's very interesting, it's very exciting, but things like that will happen. It's just a matter of time, and little time. Innovation in the rule of law, in the justice sector, e-courts. Well, e-courts is becoming a big thing, and people are thinking of e-courts in a different way. There is a professor, a good friend of mine called Richard Susskind, who writes a lot about the lawyers of the future. And he says, when people buy a drill, what do they want? I mean, if you buy a drill, those electric drills, what do you want? What do you want when you buy a drill? Electricity to use it. What do you want? Easy usability. Anyone else? Any other thing? Well, you see, she had the right answer. You want a hole. You see, why do you buy a drill? It's not because you want the best drill. It's because you want a hole on the wall. Well, when people come to a lawyer, they don't want a lawyer. They want justice. They want to resolve their problem. Okay? And if a computer can resolve the problem for me better, then that's what I want. Okay? Why do I want a lawyer? Lawyers can become irrelevant, we could do away with them. Now, there are very interesting initiatives taking place or innovations. For example, in Uganda, a group of young lawyers have created the law box. And the law box, Gerald Abila of barefootlaw.org, and you can check it in the internet, they came up with a law box. And the law box is a container, shipping container, which has Winnie, an artificial intelligence dispute resolution facility, and it has a mobile court, virtual court, a magistrate sitting virtually, listening to cases, and it has a dispute resolution center mechanism, a place where people can see to resolve disputes. It's movable and it's solar powered. So of course, this has become the center of attraction of the village because you have taken justice to them. And it's justice that somehow is immediate. If you have a dispute, you may resolve it with artificial intelligence. If you can't, okay, the virtual court is there. And if you can't, well, there you have the mediation center to see if you reach mediation before you go back to court. So this is making access to justice incredibly easy and accessible to people who had no access to justice. So we lawyers have to somehow rethink ourselves. As you attend every lecture, every class, every course you do here in the university, you have to be constantly thinking, how will this look like in 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 years' time, which is somehow the lifespan of your professional career. Because Jindal Law School will give you the facilities, the diligence, the discipline, intellectual rigor to be the best, but it's up to you to make the best out of what you are given. Then in governance, it's interesting. You know, most of you use mobile money, right? And I think nowadays there's incredible inclusivity, financial inclusivity when it comes to mobile, to using money. This has been one of the greatest things I think the government has done, pushing somehow this financial inclusivity. So if you have a phone, you can make transactions. In other countries, it doesn't happen. It's not like that. I was recently in Nigeria. The mobile money hasn't happened because somehow the banks have, the lobby of the banks have prevented this from opening up. In Kenya, we have M-Pesa, mobile Pesa, because Pesa is the word for money in Swahili, but also it happens in Hindu. In fact, in Kenya, when you say that's it, you say bus, which is also, it comes from here. So we got many good things from India. And you say, well, if you can trust your money to the mobile company, why can't you trust your vote also to the same system, so similar systems? Why do we have to queue in a place and spend the whole day queuing? And why can't we vote in the same way we transact money? And why can't that be as accurate or more accurate than counting votes manually? Well, all these are the challenges that will appear. But governance and democracy is being challenged as well. And when this happens, the rule of law is being challenged. We know that when we create good systems, there is no painting without shadows. You always have light and shadows. So when computers, personal computers, came up into life, then viruses appear. So how do we know that some of those AI systems will also not be fostering corruption, discrimination, injustice? Well, it's a huge challenge. And that's why everyone is so scared with ChatGPT. In fact, when I asked ChatGPT about the Commonwealth, gave me a fantastic definition which I read to you. But it told me there were 54 countries. And I said, you are wrong, there are 56, because Togo and Gabon joined last year in June in Rwanda. And ChatGPT said, sorry, I'm very sorry if that is a mistake, I will take this into account, but my information is accurate until September 2021, because that's when they put somehow the limit for coding. So, well, it's very interesting what's happening. But in future, we may have cabinets made up of artificial intelligence. Why do I need a cabinet minister of security or justice or investment if I can have an artificial intelligence facility that will advise the Prime Minister on what the best decision is, taking into consideration all the million factors, political, social, economic, security-wise, everything? Well, it could be. Why can't I have Minority Reports, AI Police, another movie of Steven Spielberg? Why can't I have AI judges? Well, it's very interesting, but there will always have to be a human person who injects this with humanity. Until, like artificial intelligence, the movie I mentioned at the beginning, manages to create a robot that can laugh. And is so human that can laugh. Could that happen? I doubt, because it's not just a matter of chemistry, but it's something that is more spiritual. But anyway, recently, the Commonwealth has offered the member countries, the 56 member countries, 10,000 Intel scholarships for public servants who want to learn artificial intelligence, and also 10,000 scholarships for young people who want to be trained on AI by Simply Learn, and 1,000 scholarships from King's College for public officials who need to be trained in how to run it. So, well, it's a challenge, but we are trying. Wherever we go, we are trying to look for, and you may see here in the near future many students from other Commonwealth countries, from the Caribbean, from the Pacific, from Asia, from Africa, from Europe coming, because that's the idea. See, multilateral institutions were created 158 years ago with the first one, that was the ITU, the International Telegraphic Union. Later on, it became the International Telecommunications Union. Why was it created? Because the telegraph was invented, and the telegraph was sending text from London to Paris or to New York suddenly. And they say, gosh, this is moving faster than ships, and so we need to create something that coordinates this flow of information. And it was created. Now, multilateral institutions today are suffering from somehow a crisis of identity. We were created for a world where countries need to come to the table to talk, and that was why we existed. But now, what is next? Presidents and prime ministers are in touch through WhatsApp groups. Why do they need the Commonwealth, the United Nations, the African Union, and ASEAN, and the European Union to talk, when they can talk avoiding all that cost? Well, it's very interesting. But the answer was given by the first Prime Minister of India, Nehru, when in 1949 he said in Parliament, and I read, "I am convinced that the sovereign Indian Republic, freely associating herself with other countries of the Commonwealth, will influence the world, perhaps in an even greater measure and with greater influence than before. The very strength of free association of sovereign Commonwealth nations lies in its flexibility and complete freedom. We have agreed to consider the King as the symbolic head of this free association, but the King has no function attached to that status in the Commonwealth." Well, in a world that is so intolerant, and in a world where democracy and the rule of law is finding difficulties with catching up with reality, in a world where countries are closing on in themselves, because this is a natural phenomenon, first they open and they close, they open and they close, well, we need somehow institutions like the Commonwealth that bring everyone together, respecting the different cultures, the different settings, the different values, but agreeing on some common values and bringing them together for a shared destiny. Because in the end, what we discovered with COVID is that we were all in the same storm, but not in the same boat. Countries were navigating in different ways. And the rich countries got all their vaccines together, okay? And for the poor countries, they left nothing. And the only country that behaved exemplary in this regard was India. It's incredible. And something that shows the value of institutions like the Commonwealth, which are not made for bureaucracy, international bureaucracy, but for cooperation and collaboration, is that in 2018, when the leaders had met in CHOGM, Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in London, took place in London, but it goes rotating, President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya met Prime Minister Modi, and they embraced each other and they greeted. Uhuru is like a bear, and Modi is smaller, so it looks like he was going to kill Prime Minister Modi. But very interesting, because when COVID hit, Uhuru Kenyatta, thanks to that encounter and that retreat where they met without any officials, okay, picked up the phone and called Prime Minister Modi and said, I need your help. I need vaccines. And Kenya was the first country that got vaccines from Europe, from India, from anywhere in the world, because India was the only one giving vaccines out, thanks to that friendship created through the Commonwealth. So it has advantages. We share perhaps a past that is painful, okay, that was the past of colonization, but we also share a beautiful future which brings us together thanks to institutions and developments that are taking place. So this is when I say, well, when they throw lemons at you, make lemonade. And this is what the Commonwealth has done. And the Commonwealth is what it is thanks to Nehru, who put the foot down and told the former colonizer, these are the conditions for me to join. And that's why the Commonwealth was formed, in the way it was formed. And 20 years later, 3 presidents of Africa, Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, and Kenneth Kaunda, went to London to say, well, we are leaving the Commonwealth. Why are you leaving? Because we cannot agree to be part of an institution which is embedded in the Foreign Office of the United Kingdom. And the Queen had an incredible idea. Said, no, I give you Marlborough House, one of her palaces, to be the seat of the Commonwealth. Well, and that saved it, because the Commonwealth became an independent body that is not run by the British government, and which is a body where every country has the same power. It was incredible to see in Rwanda in 2022 at CHOGM how the little countries were talking to the big countries, the middle countries to the other countries, the rich to the poor, all on equal terms. And Nauru, with 11,000 inhabitants, has the same power as India, with 1.4 or 5 billion. And the UK has the same power as Nigeria, and South Africa has the same power as Dominica, with 70,000 inhabitants. All of them, the 56 countries, are equally powerful. And the consensus is agreed among all of them. Well, it's incredible. And perhaps we are now in a time when it will be India's responsibility to save the Commonwealth of the future, to dictate somehow, to agree more than dictate, because nobody dictates, on how the Commonwealth can be an incredible engine for innovation in governance, because you have created incredible e-government systems. Injustice, because you have created incredible e-justice systems. And then, of course, in education, e-education, if you want to call it, because you have an incredible energy when it comes to knowledge sharing. Whenever I go to an Indian university, I am very, very impressed with the level of intellectual rigor and curiosity you people show. Well, now to get close to the finish, I have a 50-page speech, but no, I'm joking, not a 50-page speech. I'm almost finishing. But something important, and this is the key idea I wanted to leave with you. The world is changing, but our institutions are not catching up. The world is changing too fast, and that vacuum left by our institutions not being able to catch up fast damage, corrode, and corrupt somehow the rule of law. And of course, our shared values are destroyed because diversity is tampered with. Today, as we speak, there are 958 containers, container ships in the world moving from country to country, just transporting coffee. Okay, I don't know, well, this is tea, this is more interesting. It's not as big as coffee, but it's getting there. Coffee, there are 2 billion cups of coffee drunk every day in the world, which requires 958 container ships per day, moving around transporting coffee. Sri Lankan tea can be drunk in any place in the world. Toblerone, that famous Swiss chocolate, you can buy it anywhere. When I was little, for you to have Toblerone, you had to go to Switzerland. Now you can buy Toblerone anywhere practically in the world, even in the smallest towns in Kenya. I have found and seen Toblerone. Fast food everywhere. Okay, for example, in the UK, I say jokingly that as everything is transported and frozen, you can have chicken, a carrot, or a banana, and they all taste the same. The difference is the sauce. Okay? Well, this is pushing the world somehow into stress. Why? Because it's not that coffee is something we drank in the equator where it grows. No, now everyone wants to drink it anywhere, even the North Pole. If you are there, you want a cup of coffee. And of course, that stress is damaging the environment. And we are reacting in a very interesting way, because the reaction that is being pushed by your generation is, in a way, going back to the original status. And that is why I say this has no relation with the rule of law, but to enforce this will require the rule of law, although I hope it doesn't happen, is we are going to become VINI, V-I-N-I. And this is where we are moving to. What does this mean? V for vegan. Now it's not vegetarian, it's vegan. And of course, there are absurdities, because I have seen, if you go to London, in the metro, you see advertisements of vegan bacon. You say, well, since when this was created? For sure, the thing is putting a lot of stress on pollution, environment, water, whatever it is, because it's not natural. And the idea of being vegan was totally nature, but okay, vegan. And now when you ask for something that is not vegan, I sometimes say, well, I'm a second generation vegetarian. Why? Because I eat chicken and the chicken eats grass. So it's processed grass. But, but you see, sometimes you ask for chicken or fish and they look at you badly, like you are destroying the world. Hey, okay, fine, give me rice. But so vegan. Vini, vegan, I for immobile. To move around, to have a car is becoming a bad thing. Even a Tesla, because it's not clear they are sustainable. But you have a car, no, you should move around in bicycles, you should move around in whichever green way, public transport. For example, in London, if I go by car to my office, I have to pay £15, which is a lot of money, every day for entering that zone, congestion zone. So, well, these are the limitations. N for naked. Naked, why? Because clothes are becoming unsustainable. Before, fashion was changed every 6 months. Now it's every 2 weeks. Zara, which is a good company, because they treat their employees very well, but they have to change their fashion every 2 weeks. This is unsustainable. The amount of water, pollution, chemicals, etc. Well, and people will start fighting. There are already quite a number of fashion designers that are going for sustainable fashion. And what is more sustainable than going naked and paint yourself with something that you can wash at night? Well, we hope it doesn't come to that, but anyway. And then I for indeterminate, because also gender has become so fluid that now you cannot say if you are he, she, and it can be insulting to certain people, and then you better keep quiet. Okay, fine. We are, but we cannot say what we are because this is a very difficult issue to deal with. Then you say, well, it's true, we are going to become vegan, immobile, naked, and indeterminate. That's where we are moving somehow to. Well, we hope our intelligence finds a better way of dealing with all these realities, and we can still live the development and luxuries of life in a way that is sustainable and that makes us live better lives. But what is not sustainable is that empathy, friendship, forgiveness, magnanimity, and humility that humanity has. Artificial intelligence is essential perhaps for efficiency, which humanity requires, but humanity is not replaceable by artificial intelligence, which cannot fulfill those conditions I have mentioned. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Commonwealth has prevented 4 civil wars in the last 18 months. We do not speak much about this. We have amazing leaders across the world. We, because of our work, meet presidents and prime ministers all the time. It's impressive the quality of prime ministers and presidents we have in the Commonwealth. It's incredible. There are some who may have bad press and they have a bad reputation, sort of, but when you meet them one-to-one, it's impressive, the incredible virtues you can see. Something that I have learned is also shocking to me is how many of our prime ministers, presidents are very religious, very spiritual. I mean, there are people who pray. In fact, it happened to me with the president of a country I will not mention, but after 1 hour meeting where he was describing all the problems he is going through, he told me, Louis, please pray for me. And I said, President, you can count on my prayers. And he kept quiet like this. Then I was quiet, and I said, you can begin. So he wanted me to say a prayer there and then. Well, India is unique, and India has a huge responsibility. It's amazing how India is not just India, but is India outside India. You have left incredible mark outside this country by people who are originally displaced through perhaps very unfair practices, but they have become incredible actors in other countries. To begin with, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is Rishi Sunak. Okay, so you can't get someone more Indian of Indian origin than the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Well, and like that in very many countries where incredible things are happening. And when I think of, for example, Mahatma Gandhi, and I think of a country like Ghana, well, the peaceful transition Ghana went through was thanks to the leaders of the Commonwealth they had as examples. One of them, Gandhi. Well, Algeria, which did not went through peacefully, did not have Gandhi. Okay? Kenya had Mandela. Well, Central African Republic did not have Mandela as the example. So Gandhi was ours. Mandela is yours. And all this exchange is beautiful and is unique. The world is changing. We have to change with the world. Dell Corporation had a motto that said, get more out of now. But I have paraphrased it and I would say, get out of now, now. And seize tomorrow before tomorrow seizes you. We cannot guarantee success, but we guarantee failure by giving up. Do not give up. India cannot give up, and you have a huge responsibility in the Commonwealth. How does the rule of law falls into all this? Well, I have told you how the world is changing, how corporations are shifting powers, and the task of multilateral institutions in this changing world to redesign education, justice, and governance, and so that the rule of law catch up with changing realities and can continue being an equalizing platform for making everyone equal before the law, so that everyone has access to a fair, just, and inclusive society, where the values of different cultures are respected but not replaced. So India is not worse than Africa, and is not better than Africa, and Africa is not worse or better than Europe, and Europe is not better than India or than Australia or than the Caribbean. We all have our beautiful cultures, our beautiful heritage, and we have something in common. And that is why we have to make the common wealth, again, putting the wealth into the common, and making sure that that wealth becomes common once again. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Franceschi. The floor is open for questions. Yes.
Yeah, of course. Excellent. Okay.
We'll take 3 questions together and then we'll respond.
I have 3 questions, if that's okay.
Let's take them together.
Okay. So my first question was the comparison between Commonwealth and ASEAN. So if you see the cooperation of ASEAN, it's much better, and it's comparative to European Union than it is to the Commonwealth. And when it comes to trade and prioritizing the cooperation between the countries, ASEAN has done much better performance. So how do you think can Commonwealth do a better, can be in a better position and can achieve the cooperation better, similar to ASEAN countries? The second question is, initially when you're talking about ChatGPT, so there's one problem, there are a lot of problems with ChatGPT, but one problem that is there with software companies and the AI companies that are coming up now and that have existed in the past. They are the creation of white men in the end of the day. So there are biases that exist within these software companies that would continue no matter how much you try to eliminate that. One example of that, so if you put in ChatGPT best philosophers, it would give 10 Western male philosophers. Then you say, oh, you have not included any Eastern philosophers or Central world philosophers. So they'll add a few from, say, Asian philosophers. Then if you say, oh, you have not included women, then they will include white women. Then you have to tell them, oh, you have not included white women from the East or women of color. Then they'll add those. So the issue still remains, even if you try to change it with, like if you try to make education as well as lawmaking, governance change with AI, the fault and making of AI is inherently discriminatory. So how can that be covered? And the third question is regarding how the development of AI is going to impact the humanitarian field as a whole. So if you talk about, a lot of people said that accounting and commerce would change a lot with the formation of AI. But now the impact would be much more, especially with softwares like ChatGPT, on the original thinkers or the people who belong to the humanities field. So how can that be incorporated in such a way that the jobs, or especially if you talk about the Commonwealth countries, they do have a lot of jobs or a lot of stake at in humanities. So how would that impact, or that can be incorporated?
Excellent. Do we take more? I answer those three quickly.
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, you see, ASEAN and the Commonwealth perhaps should not be compared, because the Commonwealth is not a trade bloc and is not a regional bloc. So the ASEAN and the European Union, perhaps in a more historical way, and the Inter-American Organization of American States and the African Union are regional bodies which bring together the region for common purposes. The Commonwealth is across all the regions of the world, and it is not a trade bloc, even though trading within the Commonwealth is 21% cheaper, because we have the same language and the same institutions. So it's the Commonwealth advantage. Now, of course, the Commonwealth is the way I describe it, and is the way Nehru dreamt of it, and the leaders have dreamt of it, is friendship with a purpose. And what is that purpose? Is to learn from each other and to cooperate, to collaborate. And learning from each other means also learning from our mistakes. So it's very beautiful how we are like, the Secretary General always said that she is like collecting magpies from all over the place. And the way she put, I put it really, I told her, Secretary General, what you are doing is they have the copyright and you have the right to copy. Because you have the copyright, but we take the idea, of course, with the agreement of the government, etc., and we spread it across. So let's say Dominica, with 70,000 inhabitants, has no power financially, humanly, of creating an e-government system. But India has created an incredible e-government system. So we tell India, please give us the packages, and we give it to Dominica, and you train them. India has an incredible performance management in the public service system, SMART, created by Professor Prajapati Trivedi, who is the leading figure, perhaps, in performance management in the world. He teaches in Harvard. He told us, I'm ready to train all the Commonwealth countries for free. And if you go to Harvard, you have to pay $100,000. He does it for free for Commonwealth countries. That is the Commonwealth. And that is how we can make the wealth common, by giving all these countries this advantage. ChatGPT, positive biases, all of them. It is true. Because a program, even of artificial intelligence, will be as biased as the coder. And this is the drama we face. And for example, Michael Sandel from Harvard puts across with the trolley dilemma. That is, you are driving down, whom do you hit, the boys or the old men? And then who is to blame? And where is that company? Whom do you sue? Whom do you take to court? Hey, those are real problems. And well, we have to deal with them. That's why the rule of law has to catch up with the coders and responsibility. Because once you code artificial intelligence, you remove your responsibility, seems to be, from the results. And it shouldn't be like that. Okay? Whose is the poem I read to you, which was beautiful. I mean, I liked it. I said, whose is that poem? Is it the coder? No, because he's not a poet. But is it me? No, because I asked ChatGPT. So who owns the intellectual property of that? And well, AI is a challenge to humanity, it's true. And we have to deal with that challenge. And I think will be you, lawyers of this generation, to catch up with it and somehow deal with it, not to destroy initiative like ChatGPT, but to see how to make sure they are used for the benefit of all. Yeah.
If time we are trying to wrap up the event, I invite Professor Srijit, the Executive Dean of the Jindal Global Law School, to share his thoughts and deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Louis, it was such a pleasure hearing you. I've been hearing you for the last 5 years probably, but all the time I heard you speaking about your law school. But first time I'm hearing there was so much of emotions in you. You displayed all those sentiments which we as members of the Commonwealth share. I wouldn't use my time actually to give a vote of thanks, which always we are indebted to you for coming here. I've just taken a few ideas from you and I would like to briefly reflect in the next couple of minutes. Number one, about the idea of Commonwealth. There was a time when I was under the misperception that like I'm part of somebody's wealth. Is it a very colonial mindset or not? But of course, my understanding substantially got streamlined that the Commonwealth is the wealth we share. And that wealth is not material wealth because we have been plundered. So we share common sentiments. We share certain common emotions. So Commonwealth is nothing material. Commonwealth is actually a consciousness. Now, I'm not very sure how much we do share this consciousness because there are many conflicting consciousness, conflicting considerations, national, regional, global, that many times we often forget this Commonwealth consciousness. But interestingly, this consciousness all the time come and rise its hood in the form of memories. The memories, again, it's not really memories of a colonial past, but we all had common experiences which ultimately gave us some strong sentiments like hope. There is no doubt your talk was dripping in hope, that we share this collective sentiment of hope. We share solidarity. We have our own beautiful indigenous notions of freedom, which also all of us share. And finally, yet another beautiful emotion, rule of law. And rule of law, how do you define it? Well, without using ChatGPT, if I may try, rule of law is that subconscious sentiments which prompt us to look at law or which prompt us to take the guidance in law. Now, on the rule of law, once it is an emotion, rule of law also becomes a shared sentiment among the nation. So our desire for order, desire for freedom, desire for rediscovery, desire to create a collective beautiful reality, probably that exactly is going to be the rule of law in the collective context of Commonwealth. The fourth point I would make is on AIs. One thing I've particularly found problematic about the AIs is that, do you think AIs have emotions? Well, there was a beautiful poem. I do not know whether there was even an ounce of emotion behind that poem which the algorithm has created for us. The moment Louis finished his talk and moved on, finished reading out the transcript, which I felt a little boring, and then you moved on to give your speech, there was a new power in that because, you were talking from your emotion. Now, interestingly, some of you might have read this beautiful novel by Kazuo Ishiguro, Clara and the Sun. So in Clara and the Sun, Clara is an artificial friend who is supporting a friendless girl. Now, this artificial friend, Clara, is unable to understand only one feeling, emotions. It's able to predict the future, it's able to map all the scenarios, it's able to recall information stored in the past, but then she's not able to understand the emotions. She's not able to understand why the mother's face is falling, why there is a teardrop falling from the eyes of Clara's friend. Now, interestingly, you know that whether AI can really bring about a change or not. Well, I'm someone who strongly believes that change is a human reaction to phenomena, and change is triggered by, again, emotions. So AIs could become definitely means of the change, but AIs per se will never be able to have that revolution, have the change, because the change of the future would be a revolution in minds, certainly not a revolution on the streets. I'm not presenting any proper order. I love your allusion to nostalgia. Now we, including Professor Raj, we belong to a certain generation whereby we are all the time lapsing into our past, as if like our identity lies in a pre-global, in a pre-modern period. And we draw inspiration from that. I feel completely alienated in this world. This is a world of yours because I am facing a temporal lag. And in order for me to overcome my alienness, I need my nostalgia. You look at any of the postmodern metafiction writers, Orhan Pamuk, Milan Kundera, Elif Shafak, all of them, including Kazuo Ishiguro, Haruki Murakami, all of them are actually trying to lapse into a nostalgia and then trying to rediscover their own identity. The next point is about the revolutions. I've already mentioned that AIs could become, I'm not someone who's a critic of AI, because I believe that AI is a means for achieving human excellence. Technology is a means for for achieving human excellence. But when we talk about scientific revolutions, revolutions need an urge, a passion behind the revolution, certain experiences which you can definitely code into AIs. Now, ultimately, you made that point. You could make also AI feel the emotions, then you will be able to let the right chemical reactions happening inside an AI. That day is not far. But again, passions, I believe they belong to our DNA. The many lived experiences which are deposited in us, which we may not be in this body we have lived, but in the bodies of our parents and grandparents. But then I don't think that kind of a chromosomal dynamic would be impossible. So tomorrow even AIs will have the DNA as well. I conclude with 2 points. One is on your Winnie. Just quick reactions to that. Veganism symbolizes sustainability. Sustainability at the odds, at many temporal and spatial odds. Immobility, I personally believe if you look at immobility in a constructive way, you could find getting localized. That today you don't need to move. You have the global experience being emplaced in your own local, because your local is a new habitat, your local is a new planet. Naked, I believe it's an emancipation from the body. Emancipation from the oppressions of the body. I'll give you just a quick example. In my generation, when we used to go to garment shops and we didn't find a cloth suiting our body, it's a problem with the tailor. Now today, that's not the understanding. You have a distorted body. You need to get your body right. Not that the garment shop has a problem, because that's a global standard clothing. If it doesn't fit your body, it's time for you to enroll in a gym and transform your body. Now, nakedness, what you have mentioned, it's an emancipation from this kind of oppression on the body. And the last one, yes, the intergender identities, there is this I would like to see again as we have moved into a world of pluralism. So for me, I would like to see Winnie as as opening up possibilities and hopes also before us. Because we are, we probably can use this Vinay as an input, as an imagination to create an alternative reality. The last point, it was so heartening to hear you touching you speaking about the Indian consciousness, the Indian self. I believe that why probably India today carry an image before the world is our own experiments in self-discovery, which we have ever since India as an idea was conceived by Nehru, Gandhi, and other freedom fighters. India has been persistently onto its own self-discovery by one means or other. And one of the beautiful things about Indian self, which I, with all the bias of being an Indian, is that we respect pluralities. We have mutual respect. We have tolerance is a bad word. Rather, more than tolerance, I would say we have mutual respect. And most importantly, our own self-inquiry is rich in values. So it was so heartening to hear you touching the chord of the Indian sentiment. And of course, there is nothing better than Dr. Franceschi's talk today to show that we have something common. We have shared sentiments, we have shared identities. So let's look a little bit deeper, moving forward into this Commonwealth identity. I'm also happy to announce that Professor Raj has made a beautiful gesture in the spirit of the Commonwealth consciousness, that for the first time in August, we'll have 5 students from the Republic of St. Lucia, a Commonwealth country, studying in OP Jindal Global University. 2 will be in Jindal Global Law School with an absolute, fully funded scholarship. So thank you for you to facilitate this process, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, everyone. We have come to the conclusion of the distinguished lecture. Have a good evening. Just give me a moment, please. Please take your seats.